Was excited that we were able to get a win on the road. It's always been a tough challenge to win in Youngstown, Ohio, and we talked about it early last week that we needed to be ready to go. And the one thing that I thought our kids did probably better than they had the previous 8 games is we had a ton of energy. And if I could find a way to bottle that energy that was on the sideline, I'd be a millionaire. And so that becomes the challenge for myself and our staff and our players and captains. I talked to them this morning, is how can we have that same energy again here at home? And there were some things that were different. The locker room was a little bit louder, maybe pregame, than what it is normally, and that's okay. Maybe it's a different team, and you've heard me talk about you have to treat every year just slightly different from the previous, and maybe this is just a little bit more of a talkative group when you don't have quite as many seniors or upperclassmen on it. Offensively, I thought Trey played real well. You saw a couple throws of his, the 55-yarder to Christian. It is what it is. It was an unbelievable throw. But I thought some of the hash mark throws to the sideline really showed his arm strength. The one to Phoenix early in the game as the ball was going right to left from our sideline. Huge throw, and just shows the strength of his arm. He was confident. He felt good. I think he prepared well last week. He understood the difference, or the pre-snap pictures, seeing their bracket coverage versus their quarters coverage, and did a nice job of being able to get the ball out and on time, and only where our receivers could catch it. Our running game was solid. Again, we had some explosive plays. Ty Brooks having one early, and a big play for us, getting us down in the red zone on the north end of the field. And then, of course, Kobe Johnson's long run was, again, sprinter speed in a football body. And those are two combinations that you really enjoy having. He's an outstanding young man, and you saw that on the kickoff return, him using his speed as well. It's funny. The night before, we watched film. We have our KOR meeting, and it's one of those few times in coaching where the things that you talk about on Friday happened the way you exactly thought they could. And to have us hit that return right down the hash was what we had continually encouraged our kids, that this can happen if everyone execute their block. And so I'm excited where our special teams were. We had some explosive plays. We did a great job of covering the football. We did minus the one kickoff return, and we can fix that. I know we can, just with some simple things, and then we'll drill it today in practice. But creating the takeaway on the first punt of the game, giving the ball back to our offense in the high red zone was critical throughout the day. And then, for the most part, being injury-free. You play a physical game like that, or what you anticipate to be a physical game against a good Youngstown team, and come out of there with just the typical bumps and bruises. That's a positive for us. As we look to this week, another challenge. Anytime you play a Missouri Valley football team, I consider it a challenge. And the message that I'll pass on to our kids today is Western Illinois had the same record we did last week, and that was 1-0. And so we need to make sure that we're ready to go. I don't care what the record is. I'm sure they don't care what ours is. And they're going to come in here and give us everything we can, or they can. Offensively, a lot of motion, a lot of jet motion. So we're going to have to do a great job of having great eye discipline. It looks like they've kind of settled on their quarterback in Connor Sampson right now. I think he did a nice job this last week in leading them to a victory over South Dakota. Defensively, they got some playmakers out there. They have a senior linebacker that's a solid player. I think they have a couple defensive ends that are good players, that kind of hybrid DNs that play in a stand-up position. So we'll have our work cut out for us. We got to continue to develop. I think we can still be better. We won a really good football game on Saturday, but it wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. There was errors. There was busts mentally. Communication wasn't always at 100%. So that's why I'm excited to get back. But I'm excited because I think our kids finally have starting to feel, where they can be at. Not that they're content, but just they see the level of play that if they just show up and have a little bit of energy, we can be special on any given Saturday. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
You guys cleaned up your penalties anyway. You said, from the previous week.
Well, sometimes you get what you emphasize, and we talked about it. And it's been one of those things. There's been a couple other games where we've had minimal penalties, and so I don't know what caused us to have 10 that week, and unfortunately some of those penalties were on some upperclassmen that you don't anticipate getting penalties, and just the way it is, and we'll continue to stress playing as clean a game as we can. When you don't hurt yourself or shoot yourself in the foot, and you can stay out of your own way, it gets a lot easier to get first downs, and it gets much easier to get stops.
Been here enough years to know you guys are never complacent. You've kind of already touched on that. Where's the sense of urgency for you right now? Maybe kind of the biggest, not concern, but area that you're looking at that you want to see improve as quick as possible?
Well, I was, probably the red zone score we gave up on Saturday night was frustrating. We had played a really good first half, and then with 40 seconds left, we give up what I think should have been a tight end seam that should have been double covered in the coverage that we were in, and that was frustrating. So I think there's just finishing plays. There was some busted fits. So, I don't know if there's one particular thing, Beth. I think there's a lot of little things that we can continue to get better at, but I think with a team that has our makeup, you go into the season and you want to teach the big general concepts. Well, we're to the point of the season now where we can get into some of the smaller details of each call or each technique that we're trying to utilize during the course of the game. And hopefully our kids are starting to understand those things. But I still think there's plenty of room. Offensively, just communication, making the right reads. It doesn't matter if it's a back trying to hit the hole or if it's Trey reading coverage or if it's quarterback run game, making the correct read. There's always things that I think we can continue to stress.
How did you change your kickoff return to Kobe and Christian?
I think it was just a matter of time. And I think sometimes it's just what happens on Monday through Thursday, the days that many of you aren't there at practice. We get a chance to evaluate kids. We do special team drills. We'll do them tonight. We do them every day. We allot about 15 to 20 minutes on drills. And I think it was just the time of the year where we needed to change a pace. And I think it was good to take Ty Brooks off that. If you can imagine 11 guys sprinting down trying to take their best shot at you, it's not always something that you want to have one of your top running backs having to do. So if we can spread that out a little bit, I think that's positive.
Was he effective in high school at that? Did
He had film of him being a kickoff return guy. And it was one of those things that we had thought about earlier in the year. But I think because being a freshman, you try to spoon feed them a little bit as the season progresses and not just throw them all in, and so they get overwhelmed by all the things that they need to do on any given Saturday.
Matt, with an opponent like this, especially with a younger team that you have, is this more of a hands-on week to say, hey, like you mentioned earlier, the team that's struggling coming in to say, we know exactly what we have in front of us this week?
Well, Dom, you probably know me well enough, and all of you do, that there's not many weeks that go by that aren't hands-on for me. I get pretty excited. I think last week was a great learning situation. We didn't have a great start to Wednesday's practice last week, and so, I challenged them at the end. If you want to practice like an 8-4 team, then that's the expectation. But if not, we need to get it better. And so I think that was heard by everyone, especially our upperclassmen. So I do think that our upperclassmen needed to realize that they need to do a better job of leading, as well as our coaches, of course. We're getting down to the last 3 games of the season, and we need to make everyone count.
2 safeties are sons of head coaches. I know the question's been asked a lot, but you see it more and more as more you're a head coach.
Say that one more time.
Your two safeties, sons of head coaches. Yep. Do you notice that more now as a head coach? In the players.
Just as far as the knowledge. I think so. I think those guys are unbelievably sharp football players, and the transition to college football has probably been minimized a little bit, or the learning curve's been shortened because of just all the time that they've been around the game, the vernacular, the practice habits, all those things have been instilled in them from a young age. So, and you look at, both dads have been extremely successful. Michael's dad has won a state championship as a high school coach, and now is coaching at the college level, and Bemidji High School is always does well and is an excellent football program, and so it doesn't surprise me, and I think you'll continue to see us try to recruit more guys like that, and there's a few on this year's recruiting class that are sons of high school coaches as well.
You had Tuska lined up at linebacker. I think it was early in that game. Is that his skill? Is that his skill set? Well, he blitzed. It was easy. Was that his skill set, or is that you just trying to move?
Just trying to hide him. When we put him on the edge, he's going to get chipped by a back, by a tight end every down. And all of a sudden, based on how we could align, and basically in an odd front, we could get him to match the protection, and they didn't have anyone to pick him up. And so they would have to slide, or we felt like we could create the one-on-one rather than him having to get chipped outside on the edge. And not that he can't play through a chip. I've seen backs turn down opportunities to chip him just because he's such a good football player. But if we can use him, then you probably noticed at the same time we had Jabril Cox lined up as a defensive end on the same play. So just trying to use our talent in the best way that we can and make people have to prepare a little bit more.
Jabril and the role he's been able to play for you guys, how you've kind of used him, moved him around a little bit. Maybe isn't as explosive on the stat sheet right now, but I think that's fair to say that people are more than aware of him as well.
No question. People know where he aligns, and we've kept him to the field just because we feel like he can shut that part of the field down. He's such a big, long, fast seam player out there that he can take away a lot of throws. We haven't played that many snaps of football either, so sometimes when you look at stats, it can be misleading. And then if he hasn't had to finish games, there again, he hasn't played that many snaps. But he's done a great job, and that was one of the things we talked about in spring, trying to make him a little bit more uncomfortable. Playing to the field is his natural position. We needed him for us to be the best team that we can be, and we're still striving to do that. He needed to play some other spots and do some other things. And this being his third year of actual competition, it kind of fits right in the timeline of when you can start ramping up those things.
I'm going to say Jabril, I think he did that a couple times with Tuska in the middle. And I think Jabril did he drop into coverage both times?
He dropped into coverage. We have a version where he can come off. I think one time he came off the edge. But we have some different looks that we'll do. We can play some big zone. We'll play some man. But we're just trying to give quarterbacks, trying to give centers. Again, centers are going to be the guys that are getting people in the right protection. And we just trying to – it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game, chess match. And if we see something on film that we know we can get them in protection A, B, and C and take advantage of it, why wouldn't we?
What's his status?
Just banged up, abdomen injury. He's was irritated with probably myself that he wasn't allowed to play, but that doesn't surprise you. Any of you who know James, highly competitive young man who told me on the flight on the way home that I'll be playing next week. So we'll see if he's at practice today.
Play on Saturday?
If it was up to him, he would. Yeah. You know what? Those are the type of players I like the best.
Abu and Mathis, any updates on those two guys?
Mathis has started moving around a little bit more, and which is a good sign. I don't know if either one of them will be back right now. Barty's still in a boot, so he's a long ways. But I think everything is going as planned with the injuries and the rehab.
What's he meant to the short passing game and just, I don't want to say bailing you out, but on third downs, he seems to be pretty sure-handed.
Oh, he's done a great job. Not only in the pass game, but he's been involved in some of our sweep game as well. Jimmy's fearless when it comes across the middle. He's got excellent hands, good speed. He can, in man coverage, he can get off a press. He has the ability to double move any sort of slot area defender. So he's been a big addition. And the thing that probably goes unseen, you guys see the production, is when he got here, it took him a while to figure out the playbook. And for him now to understand so much of it is a positive sign, where he's played a huge role for us this year. And it was kind of didn't know if he'd be ready to or not. And he's proved a lot of people wrong and did a great job for us.
I think you turned it over 5 times this year, lost 4 fumbles, the 1 interception against SDSU. Are you pleased with your turnover margin? Would you still like to see yourself obviously create more turnovers? And how do you work on that? How do you?
We continue to rep it. We probably have a takeaway circuit 1 day a week. Usually on Tuesdays we'll hit it. Maybe it's a half circuit is takeaway, half circuit's tackling. We're still going to continue to practice the fundamentals. It's my philosophy, and it's Coach Braun's philosophy that you can't just count on takeaways happening. You have to practice to get them. And we were able to force a couple this weekend, big one. And as long as we can always be +1 on the takeaway or on the turnover margin, I think we have an opportunity to win. And I think I think most coaches out there would agree with you.
on that? If you have a plus turnover, even about, do you?
I couldn't
have
tell you
those
off the top of
analytics?
my head. I don't. I just know that I feel a lot better if we have the ball more times than not.
You may dress more guys. Have you thought about that for Saturday?
We did. We had a long conversation yesterday in a staff meeting. I think you'll see a number of guys potentially dress. Eli Mostart might dress. Javi will dress. Will Mostart will dress. A couple younger DBs. Anthony Coleman. Terrell Hall's coming off a hamstring issue. I think he'll dress. Offensively, Jalen Bussey. Well, I think we'll probably push 80 to 85 to dress. I think we need to. Just, again, get those kids, play or not, at least they have an opportunity to go through pregame, through the Friday night logistics of meetings and team meal, captain's meeting, all those little things that we do. And maybe they don't play until a year from now. They redshirt this whole year, but then at least next year, game one, they have a little bit of familiarity of how this operates, and we can take away some of the normal distractions maybe for a redshirt freshman.
Coming to town tomorrow for the chamber event that's out here. You guys have anything to do with that? Is he,
Nope.
no, just, okay.
Nope.
All right.
Business as usual. Maybe we should try to get him to practice. All right. Thanks, guys.